Are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Busting Office 365 Myths. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that we will have a Q&A session at the conclusion of the webinar, so feel free to ask any questions that may come up. And with that, I will turn it over to Sean Travers, our Office 365 specialist.
All right, thank you, Mary Jo. Welcome, everybody. Really glad to have a chance to talk to you today about some of the common Office 365 myths that really don't fit anymore. So without further ado, let's get started. We've got a pretty short timeline, and that's on purpose, trying to be respectful of your time. In fact, this presentation actually takes the format of what's called Pekka Kucha. You may have seen that in the invite that we sent out. Yeah, I had never seen that either. I think the marketing team has a special language that they use that we don't know about. When I looked it up, though, it means roughly chit-chat, and it was designed, it was something that started out in Japan, and essentially it means quick, short hits of information that maybe instead of trying to deliver a large, in-depth session, try to get you quick hits of information so you can get to the point faster, right? So this will be quick delivery to leverage your time, and if you don't like the topic, the myth that we're on, we've got 4 of them today, roughly divided evenly. Just wait, a few minutes, and we'll be on to a new myth, and hopefully some new information that you haven't seen before, right? So we're going to focus on the key areas that maybe haven't hit your radar, but really do change the game around Office 365 in a significant way. Things that we find most customers are surprised to learn and generally pleased and able to leverage quickly. So the first myth is around identity and access. This has been a problem for years, right? I mean, I've been in IT for over 15 years now, and it's always been a challenge to provide access to multiple different services and applications. And when ADFS came out, it looked like the solution, and in many ways it was, but it's complex to roll out. Sometimes requires 4 servers or more to do a high availability deployment, and it requires a new config every time you want to add a new application, be it an on-premise app or an app from a third-party vendor or a partner. So it's not really the end-all be-all, right? Well, with Office 365, as you may or may not be aware, we use Windows Azure AD to store identities. And recently, as of kind of the end of last year, it came out that we would now be able to use Windows Azure AD as a single sign-on solution for not only third-party SaaS applications, but even for on-premise applications if we wanted to make that work. So it's free in that if you own Office 365, you have it, but you can also get it even if you don't have Office 365. You can subscribe to a free subscription of Windows Azure AD. And essentially why this is important is because it's painful to have 20 identities at 20 different service providers. And I don't know about you, I probably look up passwords a little bit more than I should, and I probably log on to 3 or more sites every week that involve me trying to recall the access to that information. So it's painful for end users, and also if it's a business app that you've provided, it's painful for you to help users with password resets or with provisioning new accounts. And we'll talk about that too in just a minute. So here's the deal. Windows Azure AD, it can now provide single sign-on, right? So third-party tools like Okta, Ping Federate, these tools are essentially providing the same service as Windows Azure AD. And I know you'll argue, you say, well, there's some differences. That's true. But if you're just looking for single sign-on to third-party apps, Windows Azure AD is a great solution. Especially if you already have Office 365 and you've already populated those identities. But if you haven't, it's just a simple download of DirSync. It's a free tool as well to synchronize your on-premise AD accounts to O365 Windows Azure AD, right? So there's no special ports that have to be open. You can, by adding on password sync, you can enable that single sign-on functionality. And all that does is sync a hash of your password hash out to O365. What's really cool about this is once your identities are out there and you go start enabling single sign-on, you can also start populating, as I said, these SaaS app directories with the information that's in Windows Azure AD. So you simply set it up to sync out to, say, your Concur directory, right? If you use Concur as a SaaS app, and now you don't have to worry about populating your on-prem as well as Azure AD and as well as your Concur app. It simply populates all the way through. So as of yesterday, there are about 2,035 apps that you can single sign on to. And they're not, of course, all Microsoft, although Microsoft ones are often included. But you've got Sage, you've got Salesforce, you've got DocuSign, IBM Smart Cloud, Amazon Web Services, all of these different services that use single sign-on with Windows Azure AD, roughly equivalent to what you'll see at the other providers out there. And then you can also add some custom apps. Requires a little bit of development effort on your part to make that work. And how it works essentially is from Windows Azure AD, they simply can use password single sign-on there, or they can use federated single sign-on, essentially using ADFS through your Windows Azure AD, but not requiring you to install or configure anything on-prem. So you get up to 10 applications if you go with the free option per user. Otherwise, you do have to buy EMS. So this is the one caveat, right? So there's always those hooks, right? So if you want to go beyond 10 applications for SSO, you have to buy Windows Azure AD Premium, which is available via the EMS or the Enterprise Mobility Suite from Microsoft, which can only be bought through EA. It includes Windows Intune and rights management services. Now, some other caveats, not all SaaS applications support user provisioning. It's definitely a much smaller subset than those 2,035 that we talked about. So you may have to build separate identities in some cases. And even if it does support user provisioning, usually you're involving the SaaS provider to make that work. So you might have to enable an API or call them up for an issue with some kind of conflicts or something. So it's really good and it's really valuable, and I hope you can take advantage of it because I think there's tremendous opportunity here that is currently not being tapped fully. So this is kind of how it looks. Azure AD, so your AD on-premise or other directories on-premise can be synced up to Microsoft Windows Azure AD, and then that can push out to any kind of third-party SaaS application, as well as Office 365, of course, Intune, CRM, that kind of thing. And then users can sign on with any kind of device, be it an Android, a Windows mobile device, iOS, whatever it might be, to get that access to that application. Of course, full Windows clients work well too. Here's kind of how it works. We essentially can provision, and then for the federation piece, we support SAML. Microsoft, I should say, supports OpenID Connect, and then there's also a set of APIs that people can call if you want to do those, again, those custom applications you might have on premise or some other new third-party app that hadn't been done yet. So that's kind of how that goes. All right, myth number 2. Data connectivity. So I hear this one quite a bit. Basically, hey, listen, all my mission-critical business data is going to stay on-premise, which means whatever solution I build to see that data, to leverage that data, is going to have to come from on-premise too. Not necessarily true, right? So as of a while back, SharePoint Online, the reality is it can pull data using BCS from your on-premise SharePoint or SQL data sources and leverage that data in different views that you might want to provide through SharePoint Online, right? So with a minimal development effort, you can create a sub-site that will provide tremendous value using on-premise data. To make that work is pretty simple. Just you call basic web services. It doesn't require, again, a lot of security or concerns. Just simply let that information pass through via BCS to your SharePoint server. Power BI can also easily leverage on-premise data, which is pretty cool. So there's simply a small agent that needs to be installed. It can be installed on basically any machine. It's just a single machine in your environment, provided that machine has outbound 443 access. It can send all that data from SQL or Oracle off to your Power BI instance in Office 365, where you can display that information to users in any variety of ways. And of course, users then can build out their own views into that data using Power View, Power Map, the key tools within Excel, and then share that data very easily by just simply sharing that Excel workbook into the SharePoint Online site. And then that information can be available and viewed by multiple users. And why do you care about this? Well, anytime I can make that data more accessible to mobile users in a more relevant way that they can actually manage, I'm reducing my cost of building out custom reports perhaps. I'm also improving end user satisfaction because now they can see that data that they need to do their job, and they're more responsive. As new sales opportunities come up or as new marketing plans go into effect, they can see the effect of that more readily and not have to always be on-prem to get that done. So how does all this work? Again, BCS is the connection, the way to get the data out with SharePoint Online. The OData connector is that small agent I talked about that Power BI leverages. And then there's, again, no significant firewall changes in it. You can not only pull, of course, from on-prem sources, but using Power Query, you can pull from any number of data sources, including government data around, cost of living, or government data around information related to, the census reports. There's all kinds of data that you can suck in to make your users be able to provide more relevant information and more valuable information to them. It even allows you to pull in mapping data from Bing so that we can actually see our data transposed against a map using Power Map. But all of that requires Power BI. So now we get to the caveats. Power BI does cost money, right? Power BI is not included for free, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. It also requires some on-prem machine for the agent for Power BI, not for SharePoint BCS though. And then kind of one of the gotchas that often comes up as you set this up is the security around that, and making sure that we allow that security through. Sometimes requires an addition of an agent in Windows Azure AD to kind of act as an intermediary for our security to work. It doesn't work from all data sources either. It's got to be SQL 2005 or higher, Oracle 10G or higher, or you can do anything that supports Power Query can also work. So kind of getting a look at this, it's REST-based access. So this information, there's no inbound communication to grab this out. It's pushed out from on-prem. We use this data connection gateway to expose this data for consumption in Power BI. And we also leverage BCS and secure our store IDs in Office 365. So really good way to get data that may be kind of locked into a silo and put that into a place where people can leverage it in a mobile fashion. Myth number 3, data analysis. All right? So business intelligence is hard, right? You got to do a lot of development. You got to get heavily ingrained in SSRS, right, to write the reports and to develop the information, see it in a way that's meaningful. The reality is it's not that hard. Leave it up to your end users. They're the ones who know how they want to see the data. If we can provide them a set of powerful tools to get at it, and this again is Power BI, it's going to make the cost and complexity of developing solutions lower. It's also going to mean we don't need a data warehouse for this stuff, right, to give them the ability to access that data. So this is pretty cool stuff. Power BI is a platform essentially allowing us to be able to leverage some key new features. And so those key features that Power BI gives you, which by the way is only available via Office 365, gives you that Power Query that we talked about where I can pull data from multiple sources. It also gives us Power Map, which I can use to map against Bing Maps data. And then it gives me kind of natural language searches, so I can search through data that's not even necessarily indexed in that way and pull it up in near real-time fashion. Really amazing stuff. The caveats here, it's going to require some training for your users, but not as much as you might think. With a couple of days or less, sometimes just a couple of hours, if they've already got familiarity with the Excel tools, they're going to be able to be up and running and doing great queries of data and slicing of data nearly immediately. It's all built on the Power View backbone that's been around for since Excel 2010, right, and SharePoint 2010. The caveat is it does require Office 365, and it does require SharePoint Online, and it also requires, in addition to that, on top of SharePoint Online Plan 2, it requires a Power BI subscription. And this does cost per user per month, but I'm expecting that you won't actually expose this to every user, right? There's currently a discount of 40% off, so you might leverage that to be able to get that analysis done more effectively. If you're looking to try to do better data analysis and provide a better user experience, you could do a lot worse than these kind of views that we're going to show you here. Quick Power BI view, Power BI information being pulled in via Power Query. You can see here in this case we're looking at graphical representation of information that's actually being queried in with a natural language search. We talked about that natural language search. how many women won medals in St. Louis in 1904, immediately pulls up a list of all of the information related to that from the government Olympic database. And that's just a natural language query, so nobody has to be an expert to be able to do that. You can even do forecasting and trend analysis with map information, including graphical data that sometimes would have been challenging to put together. Now it's just a simple drag and drop and add-on. So the final myth is the myth of mobility. BYOD, right, means loss of control, or I need separate tools to control different kinds of devices, which of course means a lot of complexity, a lot of extra time on my part to make that work. Well, in reality, if you want to allow access to O365 and you want to be able to control that, you can set iPad, iPhone, Android, Windows clients, even Windows Server can all be managed with the Enterprise Mobility Services now. And using SCCM, we bring in that Windows Server component. Why do I care about this? Well, it's time-consuming and costly. I'm concerned about these devices getting on to make sure they meet at least a minimal bar of acceptable security requirements. So Windows Intune covers a wide range of devices. SCCM covers the rest, and it can all be viewed through a single pane of glass. So, you know, you can have a single set of policies that apply to all devices managed through a single pane of glass. That's pretty powerful. And I think what most people don't get is it's not just Windows devices, it's everything. And so the ability to do that is going to really change the game in terms of management. And it's something that I think more and more people are going to need going down the road. Now, there's a caveat with this one, and I think you've already probably identified it, is, you know, SCCM, if you don't have it today, that's an investment, right? And if it's not already out there, you're going to take some time to put that out there. But the value at the end, the value prop is pretty good, definitely worth taking a look at. You can certainly leverage Windows Azure or some other service to provide the base for you to build your ConfigMan servers on to keep your IT footprint low and help reduce some of those costs around storage and other things. So it's something to consider, and we can certainly help with that at Oakwood if you're interested. So how it works today is I've got mobile device. I'm kind of split-brained as an IT admin. I got PC management, difficult to do it all together. I want to let people get in, and I want to let people have access, but I've got to make sure I've got at least an understanding of how they're doing that. And so today, you know, I can leverage SCCM, Intune together, really bring that full picture together. Intune, it's got one of the largest development teams at Microsoft currently working on it. So we know it's going to continue to evolve. It even works for, of course, non-domain joined devices, as I mentioned, non-Microsoft devices as well. So it's something to take a look at. So conclusion, all this, Office 365 is maturing. It's not, you know, I didn't even go through the myths of security and maturity because those have pretty much been debunked at this point. What I wanted to focus on is some of the new myths we saw. And so I don't think the new myths really apply anymore. There's really not a lot of barriers that should be preventing us from leveraging some of these great new features that are coming out. And they're coming out a lot quicker now. And that's why I think we'll have more of these webinars going down the road where we can deliver more information to you more quickly. I'm going to turn it back over to Mary Jo really quickly, and thank you again for your time.
All right, thank you, Sean. If anyone has any questions for Sean, feel free to ask them in your chat pane on any of the myths.
Okay, so let's see. Some of the questions that we have coming in. Let me see if so let me pull up. We're kind of waiting for those to come in. So here's one. Looks like, is there a limit to how many users you can have on the free version of Windows Azure AD? And I'm assuming you mean kind of without Office 365 or with. And actually, yeah, there is a limit, but it's pretty high. You can actually have up to 150,000 objects in your Windows Azure AD free version by default. And there's actually an ability to provision up to 500,000 if you request to scale up, and again, still at no cost. So I think that should cover most of the customers out there. But if not, yeah, then if you want an unlimited number of objects, you would have to subscribe again to Windows Azure AD Premium. All right, any more questions? Well, I thank you for your time. I went a couple of minutes over, but hopefully kept within the Pekka Kucha spirit. And I hope everybody got some good value today. If you want to do any follow-up questions, if something comes to mind later, you want to drill down on a specific topic where we weren't able to go into the depth, of course, given the format, please feel free to email me at stravers@oakwoodsys.com. Thanks again, and have a great night. Go US.